So I want to thank everyone for coming today and for everyone's efforts and advocacy and in some cases lifetime of dedication to a lot of the issues that this touches on, and also of course our city councilor for spearheading this legislation. And I do want to check, so your co-sponsor's not here?
She's not going to be available. She might be here a little bit later.
Just making sure.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks
not
for checking. Thank you for checking.
for me, we're here to do a couple of things. One, we are here to stand up for all the families in our city, to keep them together. We are also here to reaffirm our commitment to diversity and inclusion. And we're also here to step up for community policing and the trust that it requires between our law enforcement officials and our community. So firstly, on a personal level, I want to note that, every person in our city has to be able to interact with city services and not be afraid. That means people have to go to the library, whether it's school or church or city hall, and they have to know that they are safe, regardless of their background. That is something I believe everyone in the city has the right towards, and that's why this piece of legislation is so important. The second thing is with respect to public safety. We talk a lot about coming together as a community to do real community policing here in Albuquerque. And I know from being the senator in the International District, from Councilor's former Councilor's current area, to have community policing, it means you have to work with all of the community, regardless of people's backgrounds. And we know, even in Albuquerque, our own success stories when it comes to the International District and what we dealt with in the 90s and in the 80s, part of that turnaround story was because we included all communities, especially the immigrant community, in crime fighting. You cannot fight crime unless all of your community feels safe engaging with our law enforcement officers, and that's also what this is about. I also want to speak to this notion that as a city, I've said numerous times that we have to come together as one Albuquerque to deal with our issues. And this is a good example where one Albuquerque means everyone that's here, regardless of their background or how they got here or when they got here. To do the kinds of things we need to do in Albuquerque, we have to believe and act like we are one city. And this is what City Council has now made true through resolution. The last piece that I want to share with you is this. We also know our city's history and our heritage. And we know that diversity and inclusion are part of the very fabric that makes us who we are in Albuquerque. We know that actually we should be and will be, and with this, are a national role model on how to do things right. How to represent how the rest of America, and if not the world, should actually champion diversity and champion multiculturalism and believe that we're actually better off if we appreciate everyone's background. And so lastly, I just want to say that as a city, we've always been immigrant friendly. Now as city government, we can be immigrant friendly through resolution. And that means also being clear that we are against the division and the hatred and the notion that somehow anything that's going on in our city is someone else's fault. We are all in this together, regardless. And that's what this is all about. We are one Albuquerque. Councilor, do you want to share a few words?
I think you hit exactly on it, Mayor. I think when you came to office, we sat down and started talking about how do we ensure that we frame the city in a way that's open and welcoming to everybody who has an opportunity and sees an opportunity to live the American dream, and that Albuquerque can be a leader. And we've done that on so many areas. But this is probably the one that impacts the most families today and lifts some anxiety from a lot of families and communities, and knows that if they need help, whether they're coming, like I said, to the library for reading help for their kids or early childhood programs, we're going to do that without having to worry about someone else following them home or targeting them, and we appreciate that. That's part of Albuquerque's values, and we're grateful. I just want to say, on behalf of the City Council and Councilor Pena, who helped us do this from the very beginning, that some of the families you see behind us are here because this matters to them, and it's very personal. But it also takes a lot of bravery to stand up in your community without legislation like this in place, because there are always going to be others who may use those opportunities to identify them, to harass them, pull them out. And this legislation gets back to one Albuquerque, and we appreciate it. It's because, not because of me or Councilor Pena or the mayor, we get to do this, but it's because people from our community stood up and said, this is what we elected leaders to do, is to stand up for all of us. And they brought their stories, They brought their families, they put themselves out in order to make that happen, and that's exactly how we should be doing this. Change in our city should come from the bottom up and not the top down, and this is a great example of how we've helped to be sure that Albuquerque's values are reflected in our laws, and I appreciate today the opportunity to do this and for you to sign this so that we give them some assurance that organizing in our community can really change things, and thank you.
And we should get to actually signing the bill, so we're going to do that next. But I also want to share, too, that we want to do this here because this office is a reflection of everything you just heard. So this is your office, too, right? So we have, there's a little bit of a tradition with this stuff where we have some fancy pens. And so we have a few for our sponsors and the advocates. So if you're wondering why I'm not like just signing this in 1 second, that's why. So now somebody could help me. Do you know what today's date is? That's a tough question. 24th. All right, that's good. So we're doing the 24. This is our official legislative signing pen. You can have it. All right, it's April. Pat, there you go.
Thanks, man.
You earned it. All right, now if there's anyone who is particularly interested, let me know, but I'd like to give this to Rachel.
I'd actually like to sign. Can I sign with Fabiola?
Yeah, well, this actually you can't sign. This is just for the mayor. You just get the pen.
We got the
Yeah.
from Centro. Thank you. No, they had asked actually. They had asked if we had.
We can sign all sorts of things if you
They had
want.
asked me before. I was like, that's Fabiola.
To make this real, we should make sure it's just the mayor signing it.
For Centro.
And I also have another one. Anyone from the Dreamers, whoever you want to pick, or whoever, there's another one there too. If anyone really wants to have this one. Thank you and congratulations. Thank you. All right, so this goes to the city clerk. It's now official, and I believe we're happy to take a few questions if folks want. I know if you have questions on other topics, I have a little bit of time, so we can do that. But since everyone is here, let's focus on this topic right here.
What type of protections does this legislation offer?
So this does a couple of things. Primarily, it says that city resources can't be used for any kind of efforts with respect to deportation and so forth. And that means physical locations, and it also means resources, meaning people. And so it actually really codifies and makes clear this notion that we're immigrant friendly and we as our city are doing what we need to do as a city, as opposed to what everyone else is talking about or trying to do.
What type of relationship does this create with the federal government?
So for us, we've actually had very thoughtful research and work into this piece of legislation, and the city attorney's office has reviewed this, and we're confident that, as is the point of this legislation, it's not really a federal-related thing. These are all things that are with respect to the city powers and duties, and that's what we're making clear.
You don't expect any grant funding to be compromised?
I don't, and I think we've seen all across the country that even when that becomes an issue, the courts are getting involved and putting a stop to that. And also, we did do the research to know that there's even very little at play regardless, and so this is about Albuquerque. That's what this is about.